Hey everyone, welcome back. You know, today we're going to kind of shift gears a little bit.
Okay.
We're going to be tackling a topic that's
Yeah.
a bit heavier than our usual deep dives,
Okay.
but it's something that I think is incredibly important and,
Hmm.
and really needs to be talked about more.
Absolutely.
We're going to be talking about the emotional toll that parenting a child with special needs,
Yeah.
particularly those facing mental health challenges, can have on the parents
Like,
themselves.
yeah, it's so true.
And it's something that often gets overlooked
It really does.
in the whole process.
It's fascinating how we often focus
Yeah.
so much on the child's diagnosis and the therapies they need
Right.
that we sometimes forget that the parent is on a parallel journey,
Mhm.
facing their own unique set of challenges.
Absolutely.
These challenges often go unnoticed and unaddressed.
Yeah, and when we were prepping for this deep dive,
Yeah.
the source, Cheap ABA Breaking the Silence,
Mhm.
A Path to Understanding,
Hmm.
really hit home for me because it talks about how this isn't just about
Right.
feeling stressed or a little overwhelmed.
Mm-hmm.
It's about the potential for a very real physiological response
Yeah,
to the chronic stress parents face.
that's right.
And we're talking about parental PTSD.
We are, and this is where it gets really interesting to me.
Okay.
Parental PTSD isn't just a fancy term for
Yeah.
stressed out parents. It's a
Yeah.
legitimate condition, a physiological response to
Okay.
prolonged exposure to trauma or chronic stress.
So it's not just in your head?
No, it's a real thing.
Yeah.
Think of it this way: your body reacts to emotional strain
Mm-hmm.
in a similar way it reacts to
Right.
physical danger.
So it's like your body gets stuck in fight or flight mode.
Exactly. And when that happens, it
Okay.
can trigger a cascade of symptoms that can impact
Yeah,
every single aspect of a parent's life.
I can imagine.
And it goes way beyond the typical baby blues.
Right.
We're talking about situations like a child with
Yeah.
a severe colic who just won't stop crying,
Oh, gosh.
a traumatic birth experience, postpartum depression, or a baby needing weeks or months in the NICU.
Yeah.
These can be incredibly challenging
Absolutely. Those are huge.
for any parent.
These are experiences that can push anyone to their limit.
Right.
And then when you combine that with the constant worry
Yes.
and the lack of sleep that so often accompanies parenting a child with special needs,
Absolutely.
you can really see how it could take a toll
It absolutely can.
on a parent's mental and physical health.
The source material talks about how this
Mhm.
constant state of worry, anxiety, and sleep deprivation
Mm-hmm.
can actually dysregulate your body's stress response system.
Oh, so can you break down exactly how that works?
Well, the analogy they used in the article
Okay.
was that of a soldier in combat,
Okay.
which I found very powerful. Just
Sure.
like a soldier who is constantly on high alert,
Right.
a parent in the situation can find their body stuck in that state of hypervigilance, even when there's no immediate threat.
That's a very vivid way to describe it.
Right.
So for our listener, let's break down some of the key symptoms
Okay.
of parental PTSD and how they might show up in
Yeah.
your everyday life.
Yeah.
What really stood out to me in the article was this cluster of symptoms: hypervigilance, intrusive thoughts, and avoidance.
Yeah.
Can you explain those a little more?
Sure. Hypervigilance is that feeling of constantly being on edge,
Mm-hmm.
as if you're always waiting for the next crisis to hit.
I see.
It can make it almost impossible to relax or focus on anything else.
Right, because you're always bracing yourself for that
Okay.
next challenge.
Challenge. And those intrusive thoughts, they sound terrifying.
They can be very unsettling.
Can you tell us more about those?
Intrusive thoughts are those unwanted,
Yeah.
distressing memories or images that pop into your mind,
gosh.
even when you don't want them to.
I see.
They can make it hard to sleep concentrate.
Yeah. Or even enjoy positive moments because these thoughts keep intruding.
Right, right.
Yeah.
And then there's avoidance. I can see that makes sense as a coping mechanism
Right.
in a way.
It is a natural coping mechanism.
But it also seems like it could really isolate you even further.
You're absolutely right. It can become a problem if it starts to interfere with your daily life.
Okay.
For
Yeah.
example, you might avoid taking your child to certain places or engaging in activities that trigger anxiety,
Right.
even if those are things that your child might enjoy or benefit from.
Yeah.
And that can make you feel even more alone.
And of course, there's the impact on sleep.
Oh, yeah.
Insomnia and nightmares. It's all part of this. I can't imagine trying to cope with the demands of parenting on top of all of this when you're constantly exhausted.
It's incredibly difficult. And what's worse is that the lack of sleep just exacerbates
Right.
the other symptoms, creating a vicious cycle that's really hard to break.
And then there's emotional numbness,
Yeah.
which seems almost counterintuitive.
Right.
You'd think a parent in this situation would be overwhelmed with emotions,
You would.
but it can actually show up as
Yeah.
feeling detached or disconnected.
That's right. Emotional numbness is often your brain's way of protecting you from further pain.
Wow.
It's as if it's saying, I can't handle any more emotional intensity, so I'm just going to shut down.
Interesting.
And sadly, that can lead to feeling disconnected from your loved ones, even your child,
Wow.
which can be heartbreaking.
It's almost like you're experiencing a loss of connection
Yeah.
on top of everything else.
On top of everything else.
And I can only imagine the guilt and shame that can come with that.
Oh, absolutely.
It's like a double whammy.
Yeah.
You're struggling with this immense stress,
Right.
and then you feel terrible for not being the perfect parent you think you should be.
You've hit on a really important point there.
Yeah.
Many parents in this situation feel like failures, like it's somehow their fault that their child is struggling.
Right.
And that self-blame only adds to the burden they're already carrying.
And it doesn't help when well-meaning friends and family might start to pull away,
Right.
not knowing how to help or feeling uncomfortable with the situation.
Unfortunately, that's very common.
Yeah.
And it just intensifies the loneliness and isolation that many parents with parental PTSD already feel.
So you're dealing with all these intense symptoms,
Right.
feeling isolated and alone, and then you're also dealing with the guilt and shame of not feeling like you're the parent you should be.
It's an incredibly difficult situation to be in.
So where do we go from here?
Well,
This is a lot to take in.
it is.
I know there has to be a path forward.
There is.
What can parents do if they're experiencing these symptoms?
Well, first of all,
What can you do if you're feeling this way?
you need to acknowledge that this is a real condition and that it's not your fault.
Okay.
You are not alone, and there is help available.
It's about breaking the silence, right?
Right.
Talking about what you're going through, both with your loved ones and with professionals.
Yes, is essential. You're absolutely right. And the article actually offers some really practical advice on how to do that.
Okay.
It suggests educating yourself about your child's condition so you can explain it to others more confidently.
I see.
Being open and vulnerable about your own feelings
Yeah.
and setting realistic expectations for the support you might receive.
And it also emphasizes the importance of communicating your needs directly,
Yes,
right?
absolutely.
Don't be afraid to ask for specific help, whether it's childcare meals or just someone to listen.
Right. And finding a support group can be incredibly
Yeah.
validating and empowering.
It's about finding your tribe.
It is.
And we can't forget about self-care.
Yes.
It's not selfish.
It's essential.
It's essential. You can't pour from an empty cup, and taking care of your own well-being is crucial to being the best parent you can be.
That's so important, and it doesn't have to be anything elaborate.
Right.
Even small things like taking a few minutes each day to meditate, read a book, or take a walk can make a big difference in managing stress and improving your overall well-being.
This is all such valuable information,
Yeah.
but I feel like we've just scratched the surface.
Yeah.
There's so much more to unpack here.
There is, and that's exactly what we're going to do in the next part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll explore specific strategies for coping with parental PTSD, resources for finding support,
I'm looking forward to that.
and ways to advocate for yourself and your family.
I'm looking forward to diving deeper into those topics. Until then, remember, you are not alone.
You are not alone.
Welcome back. You know, as we were talking in the last part of our deep dive,
Yeah?
I was struck by how much emphasis was placed on the importance of knowledge
Right.
in navigating parental PTSD.
Yeah.
It seems like understanding the condition inside and out is a vital first step.
What's fascinating here is that knowledge really can be power,
Yeah.
especially in this situation.
Okay.
Becoming an expert on your child's condition is essential,
Okay.
not only for their care, but for your own well-being, too.
I see what you mean.
Right.
I imagine it can feel quite empowering.
It can.
Instead of feeling lost and confused,
Right.
you can advocate for your child more effectively,
Yeah.
explain their needs to others,
Exactly.
and maybe even feel a bit more in control of a situation that can feel very overwhelming.
And that confidence can then ripple outwards, helping
Yeah.
to reduce some of the anxiety and stress
Right.
that can contribute to parental PTSD in the first place.
It's like taking back some of that control
It is.
that can feel lost when you're dealing with these challenges.
Absolutely.
That makes a lot of sense. But it's not just about knowledge, is it?
It's not.
It's also about finding connection and support.
Absolutely. One of the most powerful things you can do is share your feelings with people you trust.
Yeah.
Don't be afraid to be vulnerable, to let people know what you're going through.
That can be really hard, though, can it?
It can.
It's one thing to understand what's happening internally,
Right.
but actually opening up to others can feel incredibly risky.
It can be scary for sure, but remember, vulnerability is a strength, not a weakness.
Yeah.
And you might be surprised by the compassion and support you receive
Okay.
when you open up.
That's good to hear.
Even just having one person who truly gets it can make all the difference.
It's about finding your tribe, as they say.
It is.
But let's be realistic, not everyone is going to get it.
Right.
Even with the best explanations I've heard from so many parents who feel like their struggles are dismissed
Yes.
or minimized by those who haven't walked in their shoes.
That's a valid point, and it's where setting realistic expectations comes in.
Okay.
Not everyone is going to understand, and that's
No.
okay.
Yeah.
You don't need everyone to understand. You just need a few key people who do. And those are the people you can lean on for support.
But how do you find those people?
That's a good question.
And even when you do, sometimes even the most well-intentioned people
Right.
don't know how to help.
You're right. Even with the best intentions,
Yeah.
people can't read your mind. That's why it's crucial to communicate your needs clearly and directly.
So don't be afraid to ask for help,
Yeah.
right?
Yes.
Whether it's a specific task like picking up groceries or watching the kids for an hour or just someone to listen.
Exactly. And be specific.
Okay.
Instead of saying, I need help, try saying, can you please bring dinner over on Tuesday night? Or would you be willing to take my daughter to soccer practice this week?
I like that it takes the guesswork out of it.
It does.
It makes it easier for people to offer meaningful support.
Exactly.
But what if you're struggling to find that support within your immediate circle?
Right.
Are there other options out there?
Absolutely. That's where online or in-person support groups can be a lifeline.
Finding a community of people who get it can be so validating and empowering.
It really is. It's like finding your people,
Mm-hmm.
a safe haven where you can share your experiences without judgment
Yeah.
and learn from others who are navigating similar challenges. It can be so reassuring to know that you're not alone in this journey.
It's like a warm hug on a cold day.
It is.
And something else that kept coming up in the research is the importance of self-care.
Yes,
It's easy to let that slide when you're in survival mode,
it is.
but it's so crucial.
It can be tough to prioritize yourself
Yeah.
when you're caring for a child with special needs, but self-care is not selfish. It's essential.
Think of it this way. If you're running on empty, you won't be able to show up as your best self for your
Exact-
child.
It's like the oxygen mask on an airplane.
Right.
You have to put yours on first before you can help others.
So what does self-care actually look like in this context? It
Yeah.
doesn't have to be a spa day or a week-long vacation.
No,
right?
not at all. It can be small things like taking a few minutes each day to meditate, read a book, or listen to your favorite music.
Okay.
It could be going for a walk, taking a bath, or connecting with a friend.
It's about finding those little pockets of time to recharge
It is.
and nourish yourself both physically and emotionally.
Yes.
Because even small moments of peace can make a big difference.
Absolutely. And remember, self-care is not a one-size-fits-all approach.
Right.
What works for one person might not work for another. It's about finding what helps you feel more ground-centered and capable of handling the challenges that come your way.
And that can change from day to day, right?
It can.
Even hour to hour.
Exactly. Some days you might need a long walk in nature.
Yeah.
Other days you might just need 5 minutes to sit in silence and breathe deeply.
Right.
It's all about tuning into your own needs and finding what works for you in that moment.
I love that. So we've talked about knowledge, connection, and self-care.
We have.
Are there any other strategies that stand out as being particularly helpful for parents dealing with parental PTSD?
Well, one thing that came up repeatedly in the sources was the idea of managing expectations.
Okay.
I'm not just talking about expectations from others,
Yeah.
but also the expectations we place on ourselves.
The perfect parent myth.
Exactly.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
so easy to get caught up in this idea that we need to be doing everything perfectly,
Yeah.
that we need to have all the answers that we need
Right.
to be strong and stoic all the time. But the
Right.
reality is that's just not possible,
Right.
especially when you're facing the added challenges of parenting a child with special needs.
And social media certainly doesn't help with that, does it?
Not at all.
It's a highlight reel of curated perfection
It is.
that can make anyone feel inadequate.
Exactly.
So how do we break free from that? How
Yeah.
can we let go of those impossible standards?
It starts with recognizing that those expectations are unrealistic and often unattainable.
Okay.
And give yourself permission to be human.
Yeah.
It's okay to make mistakes, to feel overwhelmed, to ask for help.
Mm-hmm.
In fact, those are all signs that you're doing your best in a very difficult situation.
And it's okay to celebrate the small victories too, right?
Absolutely.
Like, notice the moments when you feel a sense of accomplishment or connection or joy,
Yes.
no matter how small they might seem.
Those little wins can add up
Yeah.
and really help shift your perspective from one of defeat to one of resilience.
That's such a great point. And speaking of resilience, I think that's one of the key takeaways from all of this.
It is.
Parenting a child with special needs can be incredibly challenging,
It can be.
but it can also be a journey of profound growth and transformation.
It really can. It can force you to dig deep and tap into strengths you didn't even know you had. And you learn so much about compassion, empathy, and the power of human connection.
Okay, so we've talked about some really important strategies for coping with parental PTSD on a personal level, but I'm also curious about what needs to change on a societal level
Yeah.
to better support these families.
Mhm.
Where do we even begin to tackle such a big, complex issue?
It is a big issue, but that doesn't mean it's insurmountable.
Okay.
Change starts with each of us. And one of the most important things we can do
Mm-hmm.
is increase awareness and understanding of parental PTSD as a legitimate condition.
It needs to be taken seriously, not just brushed off as stressed out parents.
Exactly. And that means educating healthcare providers, educators, and the general public about the signs, symptoms, and impact it can have on families.
And destigmatizing mental health in general, both for parents and for children.
Absolutely. We need to create a culture where it's okay to ask for help, where seeking support is seen as a sign of strength, not weakness.
It's about creating a space where vulnerability is welcomed and supported,
Yes.
rather than being seen as something to be ashamed of.
Exactly.
And of course, we need more accessible and affordable resources for families.
That's crucial. Therapy support groups, respite care.
Yeah,
These resources can make a world of difference.
right.
But they're often out of reach for many families. Making these services accessible to everyone who needs them is essential.
And what about systemic changes? Are there policies or practices that can be put in place
Absolutely.
to better support these families?
Things like paid family leave, flexible work schedules, and affordable childcare
Yeah.
can go a long way in easing the burden on parents.
And we need schools that are better equipped to support students with special needs,
Yes.
which in turn reduces the stress on parents.
Exactly.
It's all interconnected, isn't
It
it?
really is. It's about creating a more inclusive and supportive environment for everyone,
Mm-hmm.
recognizing that the well-being of children and their families are inextricably linked.
So what can our listener do to make a difference? What steps can you take today?
Well, the first step is to educate yourself about parental PTSD and mental health challenges in general.
Okay.
There's a wealth of information available online and through organizations dedicated to supporting families affected by these issues.
And then talk about it.
Yes.
Share what you've learned with your friends, family, and colleagues.
Exactly.
Help break the stigma by having open and honest conversations about mental health.
Those conversations can be powerful agents of change.
Yeah.
And another important step is to advocate for change.
Okay.
Support organizations that are working to improve the lives of families affected by mental health challenges. Write to your elected officials, volunteer your time, or donate to a cause that resonates with you.
Right.
Every little bit helps.
And most importantly, be kind and compassionate.
Yes.
Offer support to the parents in your life who might be struggling, even if you don't fully understand what they're going through.
That's right.
Sometimes just knowing that someone cares and is there to listen can make all the difference.
It truly can. A listening ear, a helping hand, a word of encouragement.
Yeah.
Those small acts of kindness can have a ripple effect that we may never fully realize.
And remember, we're all in this together.
We are.
Building a more supportive and inclusive world for families affected by mental health challenges
Absolutely.
benefits everyone.
When we lift each other up, we all rise together.
This has been such an eye-opening conversation. I feel like we've learned so much,
Yeah.
but I also know there's still so much more to explore.
You're right, and that's what we'll be doing in the final part of our deep dive.
Okay.
We'll be taking a closer look at the long-term impacts of parental PTSD, both on parents and on their children, as well as the importance of seeking professional help and finding healing.
I'm really looking forward to that conversation. Until then, remember, you're not alone. There is hope, there is help, and there is a path towards healing. Welcome back to our deep dive into parental PTSD. It's been a really powerful conversation so far,
It really has.
exploring the causes, the symptoms, and the strategies for coping with this often invisible challenge.
Yeah, and as we were talking about the impact of parental PTSD
Yeah.
in the previous parts, it struck me that this isn't something that just disappears overnight.
Right.
The effects can linger for years,
Wow.
even after the immediate crisis has passed.
That's a sobering thought.
Mm-hmm.
So what are some of the long-term consequences we need to be aware of? What can you expect if this is something you're dealing with?
Well, for parents, untreated parental PTSD can increase the risk of chronic health problems,
Okay.
like heart disease, diabetes, and autoimmune disorders.
Wow.
It can also lead to ongoing mental health struggles like anxiety, depression, and substance abuse. It's like your body is constantly on high alert,
Right.
and eventually that takes a toll.
That makes sense. If you're living in that fight or flight mode for an
Yeah.
extended period, it's bound to have an impact on your
It is.
physical and mental health.
Exactly. And it can also affect your relationships.
Okay.
You might find it difficult to connect with loved ones
Yeah.
or maintain healthy boundaries.
I see.
It's like the trauma creates this invisible barrier
Yeah.
that can be hard to overcome.
And what about the children? How might parental PTSD affect them?
Right.
Sometimes parents try to shield their children from their own struggles.
Yeah.
But I wonder how effective that really is.
That's a crucial question. Children are incredibly perceptive, and they pick up on their parents' emotional states,
Right.
even if they don't fully understand what's going on.
So even if a parent is doing their best to put on a brave face, their child is still likely to be impacted.
It's almost inevitable, and it can manifest in different ways.
Yeah.
Depending on the child's age and temperament.
Right.
Some children might become more anxious or withdrawn, while others might act out or have difficulty regulating their emotions.
It's like a ripple effect,
Yeah.
spreading outward from the initial trauma.
Yeah.
Affects the whole family system.
Exactly. And it really highlights the importance of addressing parental PTSD, not just for the parent's well-being,
Right.
but for the well-being of the entire family.
So let's shift gears a little bit and talk about healing.
Okay.
What does that look like?
Yeah.
What steps can parents take to start moving forward from this?
Okay.
What can you do if you're feeling the effects of parental PTSD?
Well, the first step, as we've discussed, is recognizing that you're not alone and that there is help available.
Yeah.
It takes a lot of courage to acknowledge that you're struggling and to
Yeah.
reach out for support,
Right.
but it's the most important step you can take.
It's about letting go of that shame and that fear of judgment and recognizing that seeking professional help is not a sign of weakness, but a sign of strength.
You're absolutely right. A therapist can provide a safe and supportive space
Okay.
to process your experiences, develop coping mechanisms,
Yeah.
and work through the trauma that might be underlying the PTSD. They can help you understand what you're going through
Yeah.
and equip you with the tools to navigate those challenges.
And it's not just about talk therapy, is it?
It's not.
There are other therapeutic modalities that can be really helpful as well.
There are things like EMDR,
Okay.
eye movement, desensitization, and reprocessing.
I see.
Somatic experiencing and mindfulness practices can be incredibly effective in addressing the physical and emotional symptoms of PTSD.
Okay.
They can help you reprocess traumatic memories and regulate your nervous system.
And what about medication? Is that ever part of the treatment plan?
It can be antidepressants or anti-anxiety medications can be helpful in managing some of the symptoms.
Yeah.
But it's important to work with a qualified healthcare provider to determine the best course of treatment for you.
It's about finding the right combination of therapies and support
It is.
that works for you as an individual.
Yes.
And alongside professional help, what can parents do on their own to support their healing journey?
Well, self-care practices, as we've discussed, are crucial.
Right.
Things like exercise, healthy eating,
Yeah.
getting enough sleep, and engaging in activities that bring you joy can make a big difference in managing stress and improving your overall well-being.
So it's nourishing your mind, body, and spirit.
It is.
And what about those support groups we talked about?
Yes.
It seems like they could play a really vital role in the healing process.
Absolutely. Connecting with others who understand what you're going through can be incredibly healing and validating.
Yeah.
It can remind you that you're not alone, that there is hope, and that recovery is possible.
Yeah.
Sharing your experiences with others who truly get it can be incredibly powerful.
It's like finding a safe haven where you can let your guard down and just be yourself without fear of judgment.
Exactly.
This has been such a heavy but important conversation.
It has.
I feel like we've covered so much ground,
We have.
but I also know there's always more to learn and explore.
You're right, and that's the beauty of it.
Mm,
Healing is a journey, not a destination.
yeah,
And it's a journey that we can take together,
right.
supporting each other every step of the way.
That's a beautiful way to put it. So what's the one thing you want our listener to take away from this deep dive?
Oh.
If there's one message that you could leave them with, what would it be?
If you're a parent struggling with the emotional toll of raising a child with special needs, please know that you are not alone. Reach out for help. Connect with others who understand and prioritize your own well-being.
And if you know someone who might be struggling, reach out to them, offer support, listen without judgment, and remind them that they're strong, capable, and deserving of care.
Yes,
Sometimes just being there for someone can make all the difference.
it truly can.
Together, we can break the silence surrounding parental PTSD and create a more compassionate and supportive world for all families.
Absolutely.
Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. We hope you found it insightful and empowering. Remember, there is hope, there is help, and there is a path towards healing.